Serious, teachers of Reddit, what secrets have students confided to you that you were able to help with? Last year, I called Child Protective Services 8 times. I'm a behavior specialist, so work with all students in my school rather than one class, but it's still a depressingly high amount. I'm the student, but a professor helped me escape domestic violence. I was living with a boyfriend who had a terrible temper, screaming bloody murder, throwing things, smashing things. He only hit me directly a few times, but I would accidentally get hit by things he threw. I was hiding in my room almost 24/7, sneaking out at 2 a.m. and hiding in my car, and having panic attacks. I was a shell of person. That professor was the first person I told. I was so scared that no one would believe me or would say I was overreacting, or worse, my BF would find out I said something. I was truly scared he might kill me if I got him in trouble. I was falling behind on a paper and I didn't want him to think I wasn't trying. I barely said anything, just that my living situation was chaotic or something like that. The professor was amazing. He asked me to explain and he listened to me without pushing too hard or telling me what to do. He asked me what I needed to feel safe. He helped me get time to get away from that situation and get back on track with school. More importantly, he believed me. He didn't minimize what was happening or blame me or freak out. He just listened. He told me that my well-being was more important than school, that I deserved to feel safe, especially in my home. I told a friend and eventually my parents because of how he responded. After I opened up about it, I found a lot of people victim blame and even more just don't want to know. I can't imagine where I would be if he was one of them, if he didn't bother to ask. I'm safe and I'm still in school because of him. I wish I had the courage to say that to him in person, but I started crying even writing this. In so many ways, he saved my life. A student told me her friend was pregnant. Both were 15. I went and spoke with the guidance counselor, who knew the girl in question, and she said she would take care of it. The girl never missed a significant amount of school, so I assume it was a false alarm. There was a miscarriage, or there was an abortion. One of my students confided in me about her FTO or transition before she was open about it. I let them know they could count on me. I also researched binders, as they mentioned them, and talked about binder safety with them. Unfortunately, I don't teach at the same school, but to date he is still one of my favorite students. I hear from him every now and then via email. I'm going to write a good one for a change in NBSP. I've been volunteering with gifted kids and teenagers for nearly a decade, so the signs are pretty hard to miss. Contrary to popular belief, giftedness is not only about intelligence, but it brings behavioral and emotional peculiarities as well. Anyway, a 12-year-old student had already caught my attention as he was not only incredibly smart, but curious and witty as well. One day he casually mentioned how he liked my classes because he felt like I was the only teacher that really got him, as others tended to find him disruptive. Another very common trait amongst gifted youngsters. They may be smart, but they are still kids, so they finish things super quick, get bored, and start doing whatever it is that kids and teenagers do. That only solidified my beliefs. So I called his parents and asked them to come to school later that week after briefly explaining the situation, since I didn't want to get the kid in trouble. They accepted my advice and took him to a research center specialized in gifted people, and the kid was properly diagnosed and has been in a gifted program ever since. Well, I filed with child services multiple times for neglect, abuse, and suspected sexual abuse. I hate to say it, but they aren't as memorable because they are so common. It's depressing. I do remember getting a newly homeless family some help through child services. I had to go to a local park to find them after school one day. Sounds harder than it was. A catering company also helped us reunite a family after we found out the kids hadn't seen their father in years. I can't remember the details though. The most memorable for me was a colleague who came to me because his daughter was vomiting in cupboards. She was an athlete with poor body image. We were able to get her some counseling. Her father was a really good and supportive man. I'm not a teacher in a public school system. I am a senior member of a technical team in a corporation. I am responsible for training new team members. So I think that this still applies. Recently a new employee was telling me about some crazy dreams that he has been having. He never said much about the content, but by the way he described them I could tell they were quite vivid nightmares. I mentioned that I had some experience with dreams that fell into the same category a few years ago. It turned out that I had a repressed traumatic event. Once I realized that, I was able to search my memory for it and deal with it. I didn't go into any further detail because it was personal. The next day he came to me and told me that he had found his repressed memory and had a 2-hour session with a specialist to help him deal with it. He didn't go into any detail, except that he now has the tools to recover from whatever happened. I know that this is probably not the intent of the question, but I just wanted to let people know that talking about mental health doesn't have to be scary and it can take place in the workplace. I'm not a teacher but a sleepaway camp counselor. I feel like my 2 cents will fit here nicely. Last year, there was this 11 years old who was crying on my shoulder for about 30 minutes because he was homesick. After holding him and claiming the child down to the point where he could talk to me, he confided in me with expressing his fear and anxiety about him going home and his parents not loving him anymore. That his sister wouldn't love him anymore and intrinsically that his family wouldn't care about him anymore, and that he was unsure of his life. I was able to convince him of the truth, that lots of people care about him, including myself. I expressed to him, he's part of an amazing program, Boy Scouts of America, and that he had value to many PPL, but most of all, that his family would still love him just as much when he went home.